won't listen to me. I'm at my wit's end. How can I just get my kid to stop breaking the rules? I know! The belt! Hello, friends. This is a belt. It has several practical functions in the world. 1, to hold up your trousers, and 2, to teach your children what's what. In this fear-based form of discipline, don't leave any marks, don't do it when you're angry, and make sure the child understands why they're being hit. Because you love them. And the most important lesson that kids can learn is that love hurts. Let's take a look at a few situations where the belt saved lives. Mom? Yes, sweetie? I want the new iPhone. I'm sorry, sweetie, we can't afford it. You never give me anything I want. Life is so unfair. That's not how you talk to me, sweetie. I'm doing this because I love you. Mom! 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 Now, what did we learn?
What did we learn?
To be respectful? Good. I love you. And now my child understands right from wrong. So parents everywhere, never fear. If your little tot is acting up, you better crack that whip, honey. This belt manufacturer is not liable for any lawsuits stemming from the use of this fashion accessory as a lethal weapon. A whipped child is a good child. Don't make me get the belt!
Give me a P. Give me a E. Give me a T. T-Y. I'm petty all the time.
Yo, what is up, YouTube? Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of PettyLaBelle. Today, we will be discussing to spank or not to spank, to talk it out or to whop it out. Spanking in this day and age is becoming more and more taboo. Should parents have the right to discipline their children however they see fit behind closed doors, regardless of whatever you or I think about it? If we hear that a parent is against spanking, they're often represented as a pushover or the parent that tries to be their kid's best friend, as opposed to the head of household enforcing the rules. The parent that openly chooses not to spank is often thrown into the same category as all those dreaded millennials, or as the Republicans like to call anyone remotely interested in social change or human rights, the snowflakes. We are told that these sensitive types are everything that's wrong with this generation. Y'all are the reason why we can't raise God-fearing, thick-skinned adults no more. Let's take a look at a few real-life dramatizations of so-called cushy parenting. I don't want to go. You don't have a choice, young lady. I said I don't want to go. I am not asking. Get into the car right now. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to remember that there is a huge difference between not disciplining with corporal punishment and not disciplining at all. We are taught to believe that parents that don't hit their kids when they act out of line are the type of parents that let their kids get away with everything without consequence. They coddle the crap out of them, and when any situation arises that would force them to have to take responsibility for their actions, they don't. And their failure to show them who's boss has bred fruit to an entire generation of entitled, spoiled, little brats that are incessantly self-absorbed and generally detached from basic human decency. And sometimes this spoiled, entitled behavior even trickles into the classroom and other outside situations. Let's take a look at how one student who's used to getting everything she wants responds to a little bit of discipline from her teacher. Hey, so listen, I was able to hunt down an extra costume for you for the event tomorrow. In the future, please let me know in advance because it really was a little crazy to have to hunt this down for you so last minute. Okay, I will see you tomorrow then, thank you. How dare you yell at my child? What? They came home so upset. They said you yelled at them and called them names and said they were crazy. I absolutely did not yell at them. I simply told them that in the future they need to ever scold my child. They came home so upset. They're afraid to even go back to the class. Okay, ma'am, when they left, they didn't seem afraid at all.
Are you calling my child a liar?
I think that they are misunderstanding the situation. They were irresponsible, and I simply told them that in the future they needed to— There you go, blaming the parents again! I am done with this conversation. Don't you ever upset my child again. As a teacher, I know all too well the frustration of having to deal with a parent that refuses to acknowledge that their precious Gertrude or Winifred could ever possibly do anything wrong. You literally have no leg to stand on with them when you try to enforce a rule or correct bad behavior. You could tell them they literally rubbed two number 2 pencils together and set you on fire, and they'll still ask you why their precious honey bun got in trouble at school. Make my kid happy! There are definitely a few kids I've worked with that have given me some gray hairs. I will say though, at no point did I ever have any desire to hit one of them. If it's not a lesson that can be taught through simple dialogue and consequences, it's not a lesson that can be beaten into them either. Conversely, we meet the die-hard spankers. They believe that there is truly nothing wrong with spanking, as long as you do it the right way. The whole premise of spanking entails approaching child rearing with Pavlovian methodology. If you ring a bell enough times and immediately serve an animal food, they will begin to salivate at the sound of the bell. Hit your kid enough times when they do something wrong, they will begin to fear being hit, so much so that they will be steered in the right direction. Makes sense. Non-spankers breed spoiled brats, and spankers breed well-grounded, humble young men and women. But see, I think there's a whole lot of gray area not being talked about here. Before any of you even try to come at me, I'm gonna preemptively respond by addressing some of the top reasons why people justify spanking. Number 1, the Bible. The good Lord up in heaven said unto his disciples, spare the rod and spoil the child. Right next to the verse where he said it was okay to stone your wife and beat your slaves. I am not a theologist by any means, but there are plenty of things in the Bible that I promise you that did not come directly from the pen strokes of Jesus himself. It's known throughout history that people have used the Bible and the teachings in the Bible and twisted them around for their own personal gain. For example, spare the rod and spoil the child. There are many that refute the interpretation that this justifies spanking, and instead implore that spare the rod refers to a biblical rod used to guide sheep. Wouldn't that make a little bit more sense in terms of parenting? Shepherds used to use these rods to guide sheep to pasture, check them for injury, and ward off predators. They didn't beat the sheep with the rod. All you Christians out there touting that as a reason to keep spanking, are you sure? 2. Legacy. My mama did it, and her mama did it, and her mama's mama's mama did it. Her mama's 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 grandmama also owned slaves. Just because it's in your history doesn't mean it's the right way to do things. 3. Survivorship. I was spanked as a kid and I turned out okay. Fine. Did you? Nah, I'm playing. I'm not coming for you. I'm sure you really did turn out okay. But I mean, how would you know either way? Do you really know if you would have turned out the same way minus the spanking? Maybe you would be even better. I don't even think spanking constitutes as abuse. I don't think kids should be snatched up and taken away and whisked off to social services just because their parents spanked them. But I do think there is a better way to teach our children right from wrong. Our bosses don't get to hit us when we make a mistake at work. We frown upon spouses hitting each other when they get upset. We don't even hit our pets. And yet kids whose brains aren't even fully developed yet and they can't even control half of their impulses, emotions, we're like, yeah, just smack them around. What? As someone who has actually endured horrific abuse, as I touched on a little bit in the last episode, I can also say, hey, I turned out okay. But I still wouldn't wish the things that I went through on my worst enemy. Not even Becky. Yeah, not even Becky. I could have easily dropped out of school, joined a gang, or turned to a life of prostitution. But I went the other way, in spite of all of the horrible things that happened. Not because of them. Because we are who we are. And I can honestly say the most valuable lessons I've learned in this life thus far were the lessons I learned from love, not pain. Maybe it wouldn't have taken me so long to learn to not let people mistreat me if I hadn't have had to learn how to keep my head down and my mouth shut when I was getting beaten up at home. The 4th reason I can think of that people always justify spanking is preparation. This reason is largely popular within the Black community. We've got to teach our kids to be strong in the face of all of the horrible things that they might have to endure purely because of the color of their skin. And we really can't do that if we raise them soft, right? Black parents in general do honestly have a tougher battle to fight. We live in a society where we are constantly being criminalized for the color of our skin. White kids are rarely, if ever, profiled in that way, whereas Black parents have to teach their kids to obey at any cost, under any circumstance. Because they'll be looked at with incredulity and suspicion in situations where a white child would be met with assistance. Black parents have to learn how to play two roles, the one of the loving protector and the one of the bully that they'll encounter outside of the sanctity of their home. Because of systematic racism in this country, there is still a huge influx of minorities living in poverty and horrible neighborhoods. How can you teach your kids about rainbows and butterflies when there's a drive-by happening right up the block? They're building up the calluses on their heart that they need to withstand the abuses that they'll have to endure from the outside world. It's about survival. And it really would take a village to change that last narrative. Within the Black community, I find that it's often treated as a rite of passage, something that we all joke about when we're older. The joke being that white folks don't spank their kids. Their kids could go ahead and burn the whole house down and they just get grounded for a few days. Whereas Black kids forget to do the dishes and have objects thrown at them, or just straight up death stared into compliance. And sure, there is possibly an inkling of truth to that, and it is a little bit funny when you think of it in that comedic way. But it's not funny when you really look into where that came from. Black women have always been portrayed as angrier and more violent than the docile white woman. So many different socioeconomic factors would have to change for every household to be devoid of violence and spanking and hitting and all of the above. Our ancestors were whipped by their slave masters. So is whipping our kids still, centuries later, something that we want to keep validating and taking pride in? I feel like now is as good a time as any to flip the script. I pretty much made my opinion clear. At the end of the day, spanking is a hard no for me. There are so many other ways that we can teach our kids how to be great citizens in the world. And as many reasons as you can think of to justify it, the reasoning behind it just isn't sound. Light up that comment section and let me know what you guys think. Is spanking good old-fashioned discipline or outdated and ill-informed? This has been PettyLaBelle. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to pettywop that subscribe button. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and if you really want to keep seeing this content every week, check out my Patreon page. It's your support that keeps this channel moving. I'll see you guys next Wednesday where we have a very special segment on acting Black. Until then, I pettywop on every block.
Yeah, you know I'm petty. I like to start some mess. Yeah, heard you don't like me. Yeah, but you don't wanna get down. Down. You don't wanna post up when Kiki come around. Break it down now. P E to the T T Y. P E to the T T Y. P E to the T T Y. I'm petty. Yeah, yeah.